All right, greetings, Internet. We're going to move on to the toms for the song Superficialstition by the band 86. As first point I went through and on the tom channels cut out everything that wasn't a tom hit instead of gating. So there's 1 point. And secondly, I tried doing this without samples and cleaning up a very, very disgusting tom 2. And we have two separate toms actually going on the tom 1 microphone. Reason being, I just was short on inputs because we had the full band sort of wired up to go at all times, and I only had 16 inputs on my recording setup. So, without further ado, here's where we started, and then I'll show you where we ended. All right, now let's move on to where we ended up. All right, so I'm going to show you the first tom a little bit, and then we're actually going to dive in a little heavier into tom 2, and I'll show you why. With tom 1, or tom 1 and 2 rather, we basically did everything on the American Class A. So drive, EQ, didn't play with the shape at all. Obviously, I didn't need a gate. Compression, all of it's right here. Pretty simple, pretty drastic cut on the low mids. And that's about that. Now, where it gets a little bit of fun, or a lot of bit of fun, is what we ended up doing with tom 2. That is absolutely hideous. Before you judge me, we'll take a bit of a listen to that in depth. So, tom 2 was absolutely disgusting sounding, and most of the work was spent just trying to get that in order. So, without further ado, let's start. All right, toms 1 and 2. Just unmute this. Go over here. All right, let's turn off these. So here's raw. All right, here the sort of really high tom, and then just the second tom in there. Here is with the drive and the high pass kicked on. Turn this off. Bring it up. All right, and here is with the high pass kicked on. Output gain, so it's obviously it's going to sound a little better off the bat. Here's with the drive going in. And here's with the EQ. So yeah, that just cleared out a lot of space, get the low end to kick a lot more, because we're adding 6 dB at 100 hertz. That's sort of high passing out the frequencies below the fundamentals. Then doing a big mid scoop. So let's show you what happens when you add this back in. So a lot of mid in there, a lot of mud. Same thing, another cut at 1.5, then some compression. Right, there's that. And now let's show you this tom. So we'll spend all our time on tom 2 today. Here is tom 2 on its own. Give us a little more room. No more room. There. All right, here's with the equalizers turned on. And here is with all right. Now let's play with this. We'll just turn on all these bands one on one. So we'll start off. I found, first thing I did was find the fundamental, and I marked it down in my notes. Down here, 70. And then I put a little dot on my EQ right there. That way I can actually sort of look and make sure that fundamental is still going through. Then I added high pass. All right, after that, there's a lot of splash from the cymbals in there. So I brought that in a little bit. You can see on this RTA, you can see where the cymbals kick in. We'll turn those on later. All right. What I started doing is sort of focusing on where these peaks are. For funsies, let's put this up a little bit. So that's probably what I ended up doing with the API. All right, so that just sort of gave rid of a lot of the gunk in the way. There's a lot of mid-range. Well, this entire signal is garbage. That's just making the best of it. All right, with the American Class A, turn on these. All right, so I did, yeah, a pretty massive boost at, what is it, the shell or a bell at 50 hertz. I guess I just bounced between 50 and 100, decided to stick with the 50, and cut at 700. We'll show you what that kicks in. So there's a lot more EQ going on here, and did some compression. Here is just with the high pass and the drive. So here's without. Here's with. All right, here's that EQ. So just a really big focus on getting that low end in there, and cleaning out some more of that mid-range, and then adding some compression. So I mean, in comparison, going from the wrong thing here to here, pretty great. All right, I'm going to actually just disable that because I don't want to accidentally ruin that. All right, let's try and see what we can get from scratch, shall we? I'm going to add a little dot here at 70 hertz. All right. I'm going to be a little more aggressive. All right, so I know the fundamentals at 70 right here. So there's a lot of garbage going on right in here that I want to get rid of. Try one right here. So that's garbage. Let's drop this down. Narrow out. Narrow that down. And really crank down on this. Next, I've got another one at about 144. Narrow this as well. Now I want to find that sort of little attacky there. I'm going to drop right here. I don't like that. All right. I wonder what happens if we turn this to dynamic. Yeah, I want that static. All right. What I'm going to do is just cut right around those cymbal frequencies. Try and I'll wind this out actually. Boost this. No, we'll leave that alone. All right, now let's go into that API. sorry, the American Class A. Let's put out that drive first. Let's be aggressive. Bring up the input. Still pretty soft. Go with the compression. Do a 3-to-1. Speed up that release, I think. All right. Now let's boost this 50, bring that into a bell. It's sounding beefier, then let's do a drop. Let's float around a little bit. I like that, actually. Let's see what happens when I cut this 800. Sort of like that better. Right now I'm just trying to mitigate some of that cymbal splash a little bit. That's pretty good. I mean, comparatively, from this to this. Let's hear it in the context of the main mix. All right, and that sort of covers the toms for the day. I hope you learned something useful as far as just sort of carving out signals that you liked. Toms are fun. That's about it. Toms are fun. Hopefully one of these days I'll give you a signal or a tom recording that's actually worth releasing. That was a fun one. Typically I would probably sample that and just skip the whole thing if it was that bad, but I wanted to try and actually do some troubleshooting. So hopefully that was helpful. Anyway, I'll see you all next round.